Well, hello, and thank you for your interest in Madera Unified School District's first ever dual language instruction program. This program is slated to begin in August of 2017 with our incoming kindergarten students. Welcome. My name is Nora Guillen. I am the English Learner Coordinator for Madera Unified School District serving the elementary school sites, and I have the honor and privilege of sharing this information with you today. Thank you for your interest. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about what is dual language instruction. This instruction is a type of instruction where we use two languages to teach the children in the classroom. The selected languages for Madera Unified are English and Spanish, with Spanish being the focal language. Also in this program, we need two different sets of students to be involved. We need students who speak English only and students who speak Spanish only, an equal balance and combination of both students, 50% of each of those different student types. So let's think about some questions you may be thinking right off the bat about bilingual education versus what dual language education actually is. Many of you may be familiar with bilingual education that we used to offer in California prior to the passing of Proposition 227. So on this particular slide, I'm going to explain the differences with a side-by-side comparison of the two programs so that you can better understand what the program is and what the program isn't. So starting on the left side of your screen, dual language instruction is a type of instruction where English speakers and Spanish speakers are in the classroom together. And they're learning together so that there are both models of both types of students within one classroom. As opposed to on the right side of your screen where it talks about bilingual education, previously bilingual education's class composition was made up of only English learners, just learning with the teacher in the classroom and no models of other students in that classroom with them. In bilingual education, often the instruction was delivered in both languages and was mixed back and forth. For example, the teacher might come in and say, "Good morning, boys and girls, how are you today?" And then quickly say, "Buenos días, estudiantes, ¿cómo están hoy?" And so the teacher would use both languages back and forth, and very quickly in this type of delivery method, the teacher and the students, more so the students actually, would start to pick up that, well, if I don't understand what the teacher is saying in English, I can just wait because the teacher is going to explain the same thing again in Spanish. Therefore, the students were tuning out to the English portion of the instruction and listening to the language that was most comfortable for them. In the dual language instruction program, the instruction is delivered in the target language, which is Spanish, and it focuses on solid instruction in that language that includes the initial literacy instruction. There is no mixing of languages in this type of model. For example, if the student is entering in kindergarten, which is the year that they need to enter in order for us to be able to obtain the optimal results for this program, then the teacher's instruction would consist of 90% of the kindergarten year and day. 90% of the instruction would be in Spanish, and then 10% of the instruction would be in English. So, to further elaborate just a bit on that, this would mean that the students would only hear their teacher speaking Spanish 90% of the day. There would be much interaction between the teacher and the students with lots of different activities going on so that the students, even those who don't speak Spanish coming in, would be able to understand through visuals and different interactive activities, singing and some little movements and types of things like that. But there would be no mixing of languages. Therefore, the teacher would not be allowed to use any English during that 90% of the day, and the students would be under the impression that the teacher only understands Spanish initially. During the 10% of the day, typically what would happen is Another teacher in another classroom who is also offering dual language instruction would switch students. So for example, if I were the teacher in one classroom, I would take my students next door to the next classroom where they're offering the same type of program with the same age level of students, and my students would receive their English instruction from the other teacher, and I would take the other teacher's class of students and I would deliver the English instruction to those students. That way, my students would continue to see the model of their teacher being Spanish only during their instruction, and the students from the other class would be able to also maintain the idea that their teacher is modeling the Spanish language during his or her 90% of the day, and then they receive their English instruction from their English teacher at that time. There's more information about this model in a few slides ahead that I'll go over in more detail as well. Going back to bilingual education, back in bilingual education days prior to 1998, based on much research, oftentimes the students obtained low levels of literacy in both English and in Spanish, and it was noted that oftentimes, more than not, this was the case, and that's part of those contributing reasons as to why Proposition 227 came into play, meaning that the students, this type of instruction was not as effective as we had hoped. And that's not true to be said that every single bilingual education program showed this, but much of it did, and therefore the proposition came into play. Now, dual language instruction, on the other hand, based on our research, it shows that the students attain high levels of literacy in both languages. Just to let you know, this is not a brand new program, generally speaking. Dual language instruction has actually been around since the 1960s, and it began in Canada, and then it moved into the United States. There are over 200 schools in California offering dual language instruction programs, and there are over 400 schools across the United States who offer dual language instruction programs as well. With that in mind, there are programs out there who have been operating for 20 years or more, and therefore there is quite a bit of research that has been done showing that these results can be obtained in this particular program, continuing to follow the model that has been proven to work the best, which again I will go over in a further slide. Going back to going back to bilingual education, at the very bottom of your screen on the right side, you'll see that it says that the students achieve at a lower level than their English-only peers in English-only instruction. That was through many studies as well for bilingual education. However, in dual language instruction based on the research, students achieve at a higher level than their English-only peers in English-only instruction. And we'll see some of that research further along in this presentation so that you can see how that plays out throughout the years as the students remain in the dual language instruction program.